in, but 7:33, so to be cognizant of everyone's time, we will get started. Good evening, Dr. Bridget Goff, Superintendent. And tonight I am with, and I'm just looking at my screen from left to right. So Steve Morganworth, he's the principal at Johnson Middle School. Stephen Imbush, principal at Walpole High School. We've got Kathy Garvin. She is our head lead nurse for the district. Ed Connor, who is principal at Bird Middle School. Mike Fisher, our school business administrator. Bill Hahn is our assistant superintendent. And then we also have Sean Powers and Lee Toby, who are our assistant principals at Walpole High School. I think I've got everybody on my screen. So good evening. Thank you for joining us. We just finished with the elementary parent forum, and we had a kindergarten forum last week. So we will continue with our middle secondary forum, which includes both our middle school and high school parents. So I just wanted to start by saying that when you do come in, we're trying to mute mics, and if you could mute your video, that will be helpful to us as well. We thank you all for submitting your questions ahead of time. This really helped us to put those questions into categories or themes, which will really help the flow of the forum. As we get going, I know that Ann Arpin is commented in the chat that you're welcome to put questions in the chat box. It's a private chat. So that way, if we run out of time, we'll be able to take a look at questions, and those questions that may have not been answered, we'll be able to get those questions answered for you, which will be helpful. So you might want to wait before getting all the questions out until you see what the themes are and see how we're doing them in which order. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by just noting these are general answers to general questions, because the middle school and high school principals will be holding individual forums for more specific questions. So we're really looking to answer some general questions. And in terms of those topics, we're going to be looking at, general high school questions, which Stephen Imbush will address. Some middle level questions from the middle school principals they'll be able to address. Kathy Garvin will address the health and safety questions. Assistant Superintendent Bill Hahn will address the curriculum questions, and that also includes the remote learning management program. Also, just to note that there will be a special education, the special education pack, or the CPAC, will also be holding a forum tomorrow at 7 o'clock. If you did not, or you missed that email, you can always email Dr. Quilly's office, your team chairs, or Mary Mortale, and we'll be happy to get that to you. We will also have Mike Fisher will address the ventilation, PPEs, cleaning, and any questions about transportation. So why don't we get started? Thank you all again, like I said, for joining us. It's nice to see so many turn out. And why don't we start, Principal Imbush, with a general overview of high school.
Thank you, Dr. Goff. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in tonight. After reading over some of the questions that were submitted, I decided that it might be best to read some of the answers, or to give you some overview of some of the topics that were asked about. So just to let you know, we had an advisory reopening committee that has been working throughout the summer. And it was this committee that came up with our 4x4 schedule. Some of the benefits are academic in nature, driven by our experience in the spring, while others are purely health related. Some of those benefits are students have fewer individuals they are meeting with, therefore less exposure for disease transmission. The longer periods mean fewer passing times. Students have to focus only on 4 subjects at a time. This will become increasingly important as we move to a remote schedule. Students also may have the opportunity to retake courses. We had a number of students who didn't fare very well in the spring, and they have to repeat courses in the first semester, and they will then be able to catch up with their peers in the second semester. Also, semester courses are 1 term in length, so we're looking at the possibility of having, for example, phys ed completed outdoors during that first term because it's only one semester length. During the remote days and the hybrid.
Saber, sorry to interrupt you. Could you just speak up a little louder or turn up your volume?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope that's a little better. During the remote days and the hybrid learning model, the teachers will be planning 5 full lessons a week for all their students, whether those students are in the classroom or at home. On the remote days, students will follow the same schedule as those students who are in school. Students at home will need to log into the class for a minimum of 5 to 10 minutes for attendance purpose and check in with the teacher. Some days the teacher might choose to have the remote students work synchronously with the students in class, use breakout rooms to work with other students in small groups, or remain logged into the class while the teacher live streams their lesson. Now, live streaming is not mandated for teachers, but it will be an option, and many teachers have already indicated to me that they would like to live stream for the students at home. I know that's a concern for a lot of parents. And so there will be a mixture of things going on. Other days, the students at home might be assigned some work they will do asynchronously. Regardless of the remote lesson plan, however, every student will be progressing in the curriculum. It will not be just a repeat of the same lesson every other day. Wednesdays will be remote for all students, as you know. Classes on Wednesdays will be shorter, but will be synchronous for all students. This will be
Mr. Bush, I'm just going to stop you one more time. Can you just get a little closer to your mic? Just speak a little louder. We can hear you, but a little more volume would be better. Thank you. Yep. And then other people, if you can turn up your computer volume, that might help as well.
Okay. I hope everyone can hear me now. Every Wednesday will be remote for all students. Classes on Wednesdays will be shorter, but will be synchronous for all students. This will be followed by a longer period of 90 minutes where teachers will be able to offer office hours to individual students. Special education liaisons will be able to check in with students on their caseload, or AP classes will be able to meet. Wednesday afternoons will be set aside for teachers to meet with their colleagues to ensure consistency across the curriculum. I'm going to get to AP classes in a little bit. I know that was a big issue for a lot of people, so just bear with me and I'll speak about AP classes. People asked about the freshman orientation. We will have a freshman orientation. More to that, will come. It will happen before classes start. Also, we will be doing an orientation with the upperclassmen once they get into school, so that they can get some kind of get oriented to the new one-way system around the school. So let's just talk briefly about AP classes. One of the challenges, obviously, of this schedule is the AP classes. First semester ends February. Exam is in May, and the second semester starts in February with the exam in May, so it causes some problems. Most AP classes this year are scheduled in the first semester, with a handful scheduled second semester. To extend the learning for these classes, we have scheduled a 90-minute block during remote Wednesdays from 10:45 to 12:15. This block is scheduled outside of any other classes, and assuming we are in a hybrid or remote learning model throughout the year, this will be available every Wednesday. AP teachers whose classes end after the first semester will utilize the time to continue working with their students up through the AP exam. AP teachers whose classes do not officially start until second semester will use this time to get a head start on the curriculum. It's also important to note that the time on learning for each class is going to actually be longer this year compared to our regular 8x6 schedule. We did reach out to some colleges, and they have given us every indication that things will be fine for our kids going from this schedule to college. To quote one particular college, they said, "We do receive applicants from high schools that only offer a 4x4 block. And while it's helpful when the most challenging courses are spread out between the 2 semesters, we will not penalize a student for something that they do not have control over." And from the director of undergraduate admissions from one particular college, he said, "We will be flexible this year, understanding that school systems decisions vary widely and that students have little, if any, say in those decisions." So all in all, I think the students in AP classes will have every opportunity to do very well in their AP exam come May. There were some questions about music classes. As you may have heard, we do have a new band and chorus teacher at the high school. Currently, band and chorus cannot happen indoors. That's the guidance we'll be given from the DESE. These subjects are still scheduled, however, and students will be brought outside when possible, and other activities that do not require playing or singing will be scheduled indoors. There were some questions about grading and attendance. Grading will not be pass-fail, as it was in the spring. Grading will follow the normal numerical grading procedures. Daily attendance will be taken every day at the beginning of the second block. There is an extra 8 minutes here for attendance and announcement. Class attendance will be taken in every class. Remote students will need to log in at the scheduled time to have their attendance taken. There were a number of questions about safety in the building that I'd like to address. Masks will be mandated. Social distancing will be expected. Students who violate this rule will be spoken to find out why they are doing so. The reasons why it's important will be explained to them. Parents might be contacted to help us with this situation if it occurs. And students ultimately could be asked to continue their learning remotely if they refuse to wear a mask or to observe social distancing. Masks are mandated by the state, and that's just something we have to insist upon. There will be one-way traffic pattern around the school hallways and on stairwells. Signage is being posted as we speak. Water fountains can be used for filling bottles only. Lockers will not be used. There will be a maximum of 3 people.
Okay, guys, I need to listen to this meeting, okay?
Mask breaks will occur each period. During snack and lunch will be 2 of those times that will happen. There will be 2 fans that we purchased per classroom, one blowing air in, the other blowing air out. This is the advice that we've been given. HEPA air filters or purifiers have been also purchased for some few classrooms that we have without windows. Desks and touch points, door handles, light switches will be disinfected after each class period. And students will most likely be asked to help with disinfecting their own area right before they leave, and possibly if they would like also when they come back into another class. Lunch, it came up in a couple of questions about lunch. We will serve lunch in the 4th block classroom. Students who purchase lunch will be asked to place a weekly order, and we have satellite serving stations that have been purchased to disseminate food. Snack time will take place in the 2nd period classroom without any purchase, so that will be snacks that kids will bring with them themselves. There were some questions about sports and clubs. Currently, the MIA have postponed the start of sports season until at least September 14th. We're expecting further guidance soon on this from MIAA. Students in the district remote learning management system will still be eligible to participate in sports. We've not made a decision about clubs yet, although I am leaning heavily to allowing clubs to continue under the right safety conditions. We did run a few summer courses without any problems. Some of this will depend on the type of club, jazz band, for example, may not happen just because of the guidance we've received on band. But speech and debate possibly could. Robotics, we'll go through them, and some of this will depend on how comfortable the club advisor is in running the club. Finally, there was some questions regarding parking. Parking spots have all been filled by seniors who wanted them. We are looking at offering juniors the chance to park on the 2 days when they are in. If we open full time, however, that spot will belong to the senior. If refunds are warranted, that will happen towards the end of the school year. More to come on this, but there will be an opportunity for juniors to park, and we'll get that information out as soon as possible. There may have been questions, Dr. Goff, and I'm staying around to answer them as they come up.
Thank you. And please note that there will be an individual high school forum, so you'll be able to get very specific questions to answer that. If they are in the chat box, and if there's no time remaining, we're going to make sure that we get all these questions, and we'll filter them out to the principals so they can also address them in the individual forums if they're more building specific. Thank you, Stephen. One question that people wanted to know that was submitted ahead of time too as well, is that will students in the STEM program be allowed to participate? I don't know if you have the answer to that at this time.
I think that will depend. I think the question may be referring to students who are remote full-time. I think what we'll need to do is to look at the courses that are being offered in the remote management system, and then make a decision individually depending on where they are within the STEM program. But,
great, thank you.
People can email me directly with that question.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to turn it over to the middle school principals, Steve Morganworth and Ed Connor, to talk a little bit about middle school and address the questions that were asked.
Thank you, Dr. Goff. So we're not going to go into as much detail about the schedule as Mr. Ambush did. Middle school schedule is going to operate on an 8-period schedule. We're going to have 4 periods each day the students will be attending. We have our students broken into 2 cohorts, an A cohort and a B cohort, which will be the different days of the week. So A cohort students will attend school on Monday and Tuesday of each week. They will go through their first 4 periods, or their first 3 periods plus a support block on Monday, and then period 4, 5, 6, and 7 on Tuesday. The B cohort students will do the same thing, but on Thursday and Friday of the week. Just like the high school, the students who are in school and the students that are and who are at home will be progressing through their curriculum simultaneously. May not be the same activities or the same assignments, but we're not going to be repeating the content Monday and Tuesday, and then again on Thursday and Friday. On Wednesday, we have the remote schedule like the high school does, but instead we're going to be running through all 7 of our academic periods that morning for half an hour each, and both cohorts will combine remotely to be able to meet with their teacher as a whole group. So that's the overview of our schedule. The couple of big changes to it, and Mr. Connor, you can certainly jump in whenever you want to. The first is that in order for us to be able to have to keep our students in learning pods, which will minimize their exposure to other students and interaction with other groups, we have taken what students used to take 4 related arts per term, per semester. We're going to do it 2 per term and have those students assigned to just attending those 2 related arts each term of the year. They'll still have the entire full boat of related art classes, but they'll only do 2 per term. And the other big change, and we'll speak to this certainly, and some parents have asked questions about it, is that we are not going to have leveled classes for ELA or for math. Here's the reason why, and I know that it seems like it would be a really easy fix, but leveled classes create spikes in enrollment in some sections and deficits in others. It makes it really nearly impossible to juggle and to manage and to keep our learning pods at reasonable sizes that, again, keep the health and safety of our learning community as the priority. So because we are prioritizing our health and safety over different class sizes. We have decided to do away with the leveled classes for this year. We are still going to be looking at trying to find ways to offer enrichment opportunities for students who want them. And I also want to mention that we do have longer class blocks for each one of our periods. So instead of our normal 50-minute periods, we now have 80-minute periods. In that time, our teachers are going to be tasked with making sure that they are providing instruction that is not only going to provide, curriculum overview, but also challenge all students at whatever level they're at. So whether you have a student who excels and is a high achieving student, or a student who has struggled traditionally, those teachers are going to be able to work with their small groups, differentiate their instruction, and make sure that they're providing instruction that's appropriate for all learners in their class. So I don't want to make it sound like we are somehow lowering the bar. In fact, we're going to raise the bar for all of our students.
Because one of the things that we are looking at is that we know that sometimes some students need extra help because they're having a difficult time. We also want to provide challenging opportunities for students who are, need to have that challenge. So there's different types of extra help, whether you need it because it's harder for you, or whether you need it because you're looking for more of a challenge. Those are some of the things that we will be doing. I did want to say one thing about music and phys ed. Those classes will be semester long. Those are the only two related arts that will be for a full semester. So we're still offering every single related art that we have. They'll just be for different lengths of time throughout the year. And when the teachers are teaching their classes, they will start out with attendance for the students who are in front of them and for the students who are at home, to be able to check in with them, to keep them connected with the students in the classes that they have in front of them, to review some of the material that they've done previously, to talk about the assignments that they're doing at home. Some teachers, at the high school, may decide to do some live streaming, but again, that's not the expectation. Mostly it'll be focused on the students in front of them. If some teachers decide to do that, we will help them make that happen. Also, at the middle school, we will not be using lockers either. Students will keep all their backpacks with everything in the classroom that they're in, because we will not be moving around the school very much. During the 4 periods of each day, the students will be in that classroom for 3 out of the 4 periods, only leaving for their related arts or to go to lunch, because right now our lunch rooms can facilitate keeping students socially distanced while eating lunch and having no masks on. So those are just a couple of the things that I wanted to add as well to some of the things that Mr. Morganweg did already share.
So again, our students will be, the middle school students will be staying in their home base of learning for the majority of the day. We're going to limit the movement throughout the building. Teachers will be coming to them versus them going to other teachers. So traditionally they've moved between classes each period. They're going to stay put. The teacher will come to them, and that way we're going to again reduce exposure for the mass of students throughout the building that day. Let's get to some of our other questions too. Sorry. There was a question about the learning platform that we'll be using. We are going to be committed to Google Meets and Google Classroom for the coming year. So students and our teachers will be working to provide their curriculum through those formats, and we're going to be doing our best to provide information and training if necessary for parents and student users, as well as our teachers, to make sure that that's happening across the board. We recognize that having a lot of different platforms became a challenge for families last spring.
There was a question about the support enrichment block. That's going to be used for a variety. It'll have a variety of uses, whether it be extra help. We will probably have some grade level virtual meetings. We'll also do some school culture activities because we are very cognizant that, you know, the students' social and emotional well-being for this year, based on what we've been experiencing throughout the past 6 months, is something we're going to be working on to help them feel safe and secure and highly connected to the school as much as we can be. And speaking of that, we are planning to have the 6th graders in before school starts to give some tours. Obviously, they'll be, you know, how they controlled and, you know, who comes when and what they're going to be able to do. But they will have the opportunity to come into the building, meet the teachers, see what the procedures are for getting off the bus, for getting back on the bus, going down to lunch, because we feel it's important that they do have a good idea of what to do before they get to us.
The other question that we had was about mask breaks. We'll do our best to have teachers coordinate times where students go outside for mask breaks. We've built, again, extra time into each class period to allow for some of that transition time for them to be able to take their mask off, to take a break from learning, to move from the space that they're in all day. If they can go outside, they will. If not, then we'll coordinate within our classrooms to have alternating rows, taking their masks off for 5 or 10 minutes, and kind of working around it that way. And again, maximizing the space between students who don't have their masks on. But we'll do everything by the purview of our guidelines and safety practices.
Great, thank you. I'd like to turn it over to Kathy Garvin, who will talk about health and safety protocol and procedures.
Thank you, Dr. Goff, and thank you to all of you that sent in the questions ahead of time. It's much appreciated. So one of the biggest questions that came in is, if a student is diagnosed with COVID-19, will we mandate all cohorts to quarantine and learn remotely for 14 days? Will the entire class quarantine? So at the elementary level, the cohort is always considered the class. The class will then become a cohort, and they would be considered close contacts, and they would quarantine. The high school schedule, it's based on everybody switching classes. So there's kind of like a small cohort within that class, and it's based on where is that child sit who's tested positive, or where is that staff member, if it's the teacher who's teaching at the front of the class. And then from there, we look out 6 feet in front and back, kitty corner, diagonal, and to the sides. And that becomes the small cohort within that class. The middle school will have a little bit of both, because they'll mostly be in class all day, but they'll also be doing some changing. And the seating arrangements, again, will become very important, even at lunchtime. We'll need to know where the kids are sitting, so that if somebody becomes positive, the school nurses can work to develop a list of contacts within the school that they'll turn over to our public health nurse, who will be following up on the contact tracings in that situation. Let's see. Currently, the guidelines are, if somebody is positive, they must isolate for 10 days from the onset of symptoms or the date of the positive test. Students who are close contact, when they're sent home to quarantine, the guidelines that DESE has told us about want those students to then go and get a test on around about day 4 or 5 to give the virus a little chance to take hold, and so it can be actually found in the test. An example might be, if you take your child for a strep throat test, if you go the minute the child wakes up with a sore throat, there's not going to be enough of that bacteria to cause a positive test. So you'd probably wait till the next day. Similarly, COVID-19, if you go too soon, you're going to get a negative test and you'll feel falsely reassured. So at 4 to 5 days, you would go and get a test. If that test is negative, your child's able to return to school. If your child's positive, then your child will start the isolation process on the day that the test was taken. Let's see. Okay, the next question was, how is the school addressing contact tracing when someone's infected, and what if students or families do not cooperate with the contact tracing? So the Walpole Public Health Nurse will be conducting the contact tracing for positive cases. And as I just explained, the school nurse will assist with providing the information about who's been exposed within the school. The public health nurse also follows up with anybody that the person's been in contact with 48 hours prior, family, friends, if they've been involved in other activities. That's also very important. We're very hopeful that all parents will cooperate with this contact tracing, because it's the only way we'll be able to control the transmission of the virus and to stay in a in-person hybrid model for the school district. What criteria will the school use to determine when it's time to move to fully remote? Will Walpole act independently or wait on direction from elsewhere? So Walpole's health director, Melissa Ranieri, will work very closely with Dr. Goff to determine when the rate of transmission in the schools is high enough to warrant going to fully remote, and partially that'll be based on what is the community transmission as well. Melissa has indicated that she would take a look at the community transmission, but if in the school system it is doing okay, that she wouldn't necessarily close the schools at that time. And also, obviously, Governor Baker can decide to close all schools in the state, as he did in March. DESE released expectations that towns such as Walpole, with average daily cases per 100,000 less than 4, should return full-time in person or hybrid only if there are extenuating circumstances. What are the extenuating circumstances that are preventing Walpole from returning full-time in person? So the guidelines from DESE indicated that a district could use a minimum of 3 feet, which is guidance provided from the World Health Organization for social distancing, or 6 feet, which is what our Center for Disease Control recommends. A significant majority of families and staff indicated that they were much more comfortable with having 6 feet distancing. At 3 feet, I believe the district would have been able to fit all students into classrooms, but at 6 feet, there just isn't enough room to provide the number of classrooms that would be needed. Will students or teachers with waivers, I think that's your question, Dr. Goff, I'll continue on. Can students wear a face shield versus a mask? And what are the guidelines for those with chronic asthma? So face shields do not provide the same protection for either the person wearing them or the person, the people around them, as much protection as a face mask, because they're open on the bottom and on the sides. So face shields can provide extra protection for the eyes when used in conjunction, along with a mask. And as far as students with asthma, I would suggest speaking with your asthma specialist regarding this issue and what's best for your child. Students who have asthma that can be well controlled should not have any difficulty wearing a mask. But again, this is something you'd want to discuss with your asthma specialist. Will wearing masks be mandatory while in school? Yes. Will there be distancing in the classrooms? Yes, 6 feet. How often are students required to wash or Purell their hands? So students should use hand sanitizer before entering the classroom, before and after lunch, after using the bathroom, and prior to dismissal. The guidelines suggest that this should be the minimum number of times that students either wash their hands or use hand sanitizer. Based on the statistics, Walpole does not have a high COVID rate, but are all the teachers Walpole residents? No, they are not. If not all teachers are Walpole residents and a teacher's town of residence cannot be provided due to privacy, how can you ensure our child will not be exposed to someone coming from a town with a high COVID-19 rate? So all staff are going to be required to do a daily self-check, a self-assessment each morning before they go to work. And families actually too will be asked to do this for their children. If any of the questions are answered yes with regard to any of the symptoms, the staff will be instructed not to come into work that day, just as your child will be instructed not to come to school that day. Does my son need a physical exam to come to school? All new students need a physical exam. If there's difficulty with scheduling a physical exam with your doctor, please let your school nurse, and she can work with you to waive the date it's necessary based on the pandemic. In addition, grade 7 and grade 11 students need to provide a physical exam at some point during their school year. Immunizations are the most important thing that is necessary. All immunizations are needed to start school unless there's a medical or religious exemption. The State Department of Public Health has not waived the requirement for immunizations this year, so all immunizations are necessary to start school. A parent stated, I'm a healthcare worker. If I test positive, does that mean my child will have to quarantine? Yes. If anyone in a child's family tests positive, the entire family must quarantine. Will Walpole Public Schools frequently remind parents about the checklist? Yes, we will definitely be reminding parents about the checklist for the health assessment frequently. And just a little aside, at middle and high school, we a lot of these symptoms that maybe are seen in elementary school might not occur. So, but we still do have a regular list of reasons a child might be sent home from school: fever of 100 degrees, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, a sore throat that looks like it could have potential to be strep, conjunctivitis, etc. With COVID-19, a lot of the symptoms can appear to be very mild, and we are going to be very, very conservative on the symptoms. So if your child presents with a very mild symptom, you will get a call to please come and pick your child up. We are asking for parents to provide enough contacts that we can locate so that your child could be picked up within about 30 minutes. Each health office has isolation rooms, but some of them are divided into cubicles, so we do want to have your child picked up as quickly as possible so we can clean and disinfect that area just in case your child does test positive, so that the next person coming in has a clean area to wait in for their pickup. I think that's all the questions except the one you would like to answer, Dr.
Yep,
Goff.
thanks, Catherine. And then also just about the checklist, that if you do go on to the Walpole Public Schools website, and in the entry plan that was posted, there is a link to the guidance, to health guidance, and there's a checklist, pretty comprehensive checklist that's involved in that. In terms of the mask, someone asked, will students, or teachers, are there waivers, to not wear a mask? No, there are no waivers. And what happens if a student refuses to wear a mask? There will be policies and protocol put into place, and then also school committee, at the new school committee meeting, they will be reviewing and voting on a mask policy that's consistent with other districts across the state of Massachusetts. With that being said, when the administration, in terms of looking at the different grade levels, will institute a proper protocol, it'll be consistent. It'll be consistent at the levels, because we know that a first grader versus maybe 11th grader, it may look different. And each student also is an individual, and we need to take a look at why that student is not wearing a face mask. Is it, that there is a particular issue, a social emotional issue? Is it somebody that is just, it's a disciplinary issue? So we have to take and look at all issues on an individual basis, but there will be procedures that will be put into place for that. I'd like to turn it next over to Assistant Principal Bill Hahn, who will talk about the curriculum in terms of the remote, the remote learning management program, and then also talking about some other questions that might be related to the hybrid model.
Also, good evening, everyone. Like many of our teachers and administrators, I've been on the other end of these calls as a parent, so I appreciate your investment and your commitment to being with us here this evening. Probably the most questions I've received have been in the context of the remote learning management system. So rather than try to answer about 100 specific questions, I've taken the questions and tried to create one strong statement that clarifies many of the questions that we were asked. We know that there are many questions about the remote learning management system that we have chosen for the district. So I want to spend a few minutes discussing our process and how we decided that Edgenuity courseware managed by Walpole Public School staff was the best model for our district. Before I begin, I want to clarify, there is no perfect model. Whether we adopted a model endorsed by DESE, outsourced our students to a virtual school, or managed the model fully in-house, there would be pros and cons to each and every model. What I can assure you, and what I stand by as an educational professional, is that we took the process very seriously and vetted each option as best we could in the short timetable we are given to make what we believe is the best decision for our district. Let's start with the timetable and details about all the potential options. DESE released the Remote Learning Management Guidance on Wednesday, August 5th. This guidance endorsed two potential directions for districts to take. We could, one, purchase courses with instructional services provided through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts virtual schools, it's Greenfield Academy and TECA. Or two, the other option is to purchase student licenses for a learning management system with full course content and asynchronous instruction, and that would be Edgenuity. Of course, there is a third option, and that's districts create and manage their own remote learning management system, which is actually what we are doing at the K-5 level in Walpole. And I'll get back to why that differs from 6 to 12. On August 6th, as you know, school committee voted to adopt the hybrid model to start the 2021 school year. And Dr. Goff followed up with a survey to parents requesting what model they were going to choose for the school year. That response is due Thursday, August 20th. At this point, over 2,300 families have completed this survey, but we know that many families were and are waiting to complete the survey after they receive more information on the remote learning management system. That is why we released a summary and answers to FAQs about the remote learning management system for Walpole Public Schools yesterday. And obviously our goal tonight is to answer and respond to as many additional questions as we can. So with three potential options, why did we choose the Edgenuity courseware platform? Ultimately, after reviewing the initial results from the survey, collaborating with numerous districts, listening to parent caregiver feedback, vetting each model, and evaluating the complex staffing of the middle school and high school curriculum, we determined that Edgenuity courseware platform was going to be our best fit. In addition, I want to elaborate on three details that also contributed to our decision. One, in the initial feedback, many parents and caregivers shared their concerns that students would be disconnected from the middle school and high school, especially with the peers and staff, if we chose the remote learning management system. This model we decided to go with ensures daily homeroom communication led by a Walpole Public School staff member and academic support in specific content areas also delivered by Walpole Public School staff members when necessary. Two, we also received several inquiries about students transitioning from hybrid to the remote learning management system or the other way around. If we chose a virtual school, students would have to remain in that school for minimally up to a semester, and in some cases, a full year. While we will have limitations on transferring between models with Edgenuity, there will not be a full semester limitation on transferring students, and we'll have multiple times during a semester when a student could potentially transfer models if we can do so in a way that is best for student learning. And finally, three, the Edgenuity courseware can also be utilized in the hybrid model during remote days. All Walpole Public School staff will have access to Edgenuity resources to support in-person and remote instruction. This will also help support continuity between both hybrid and full in-person models. Even with these reasons, we know there are some of you that have concerns about Edgenuity and would prefer that we manage the remote learning management system fully by Walpole Public School staff. Unfortunately, this is not sustainable at the middle school and high school levels with multiple course offerings and would require us to hire staff that is not possible with our current budget. However, we will be using Walpole Public School staff to support students as they progress through course content. Some have suggested that simply live streaming classes would address this concern. And while we actually did evaluate this model and communicate with several districts that are trying to implement live streaming, ultimately we decided for a number of reasons this would not support learning and make it almost impossible on our teachers who are already faced with incredible challenges this school year. Finally, with all that said, I know there are families who are frustrated with this option. I have read hundreds of emails, taken many phone calls, and seen posts from social media sites. Please know, I share in your frustrations. The downside of this program has kept us up at night, and not every review about Edgenuity has been perfect. However, I know we are doing the best with an imperfect system at an imperfect time in our history. I have no doubt we will have to make adjustments as we move forward, and we will learn from each other. And as always, we will learn from our students. I do hope after tonight you will support our decision, and that if you have concerns, you share them with the building principal or district administrator. I worry about our students. It is challenging enough during a pandemic to be a teenager. I don't think they need to hear about remote learning management system not being perfect or read on Facebook that their schools don't care. Truth is, we care deeply about our kids, your kids. And at this time, this is what we believe is the best remote learning management model. And we are committed to work with families and students to do our best with this difficult situation. While I believe that answers many of the questions that were posted about the remote learning management system, I do want to read a couple questions to make sure that were not answered specifically, to make sure that they are answered. One question was, will students who want to take part in extracurricular activities or sports be able to participate? If there is a remote or virtual option, students will be able to participate in all extracurricular activities or sports. We understand that many families are choosing the full remote option for the safety purposes of not wanting their students in person. So that wouldn't be a consideration. But if there is a way to do things remotely for our students, that will be an option. Will foreign language be offered? Yes, the Edgenuity courseware offers many courses in foreign language. Will the full remote option be available for students for an IEP? In short, yes. Any student who has an IEP will be fully supported to access the remote learning management option. Can we opt in either fully in class or or the full remote learning if the hybrid is not meeting my students' needs? Students cannot opt into fully in class. The in-class option is part of the hybrid model, but we will have times where students can transition to the remote learning management system, and we have not been able to publish or communicate yet that timetable because we have to consider many different options, and some of those things are answered in our FAQ that was sent yesterday that I would encourage you to look at. We have gotten, and I touched on it briefly, but I think it's worth spending a few minutes on right now. We have had a few people bring up again this idea of virtual live stream learning and why we wouldn't consider it. And that's literally levels from K all the way to 12. I want to reiterate that we did look into it. We did talk about the potential of live streaming. And to be fully transparent, our concern is right now, we are asking an incredible staff, an incredible group of teachers to manage in-person learning and to manage remote learning for their entire students in a new schedule. That will be a challenge enough, and I know our teachers will rise to the challenge. Also, like Mr. Embush said, I also know that many of our teachers will use live streaming and live Zoom or Google Meet sessions to talk in person and to those students that are at home and remote. But to mandate or to put a camera in every classroom, to require a teacher to hold still, to move minimally along a room, or to implement a lab or an art class without moving so that a class can be perfectly streamed, right now we don't think that's an option we can pursue that will ensure strong pedagogical practices. So that's not something we won't continue to examine and look at if we feel like we can do it, but we hope that answer at least lets you know that we've considered it thoughtfully. Will the remote program offer advanced courses? Yes, with restrictions. We'll have to work with our guidance department to determine which AP courses are available through the Edgenuity courseware. But yes, as a whole, the Edgenuity platform offers AP courses. If I choose the remote learning management system, will my child be with other Walpole students or students across the state? My assumption is that question came in when there was a potential that we would choose a virtual school. And since we have not, students will not be working with any other students across the state. Students will meet with Walpole students in homerooms and in check-ins, but the remote learning management system we chose, Edgenuity, is a self-paced, content-driven program. We will, of course, be monitoring our students' pace, but they will not be working in a classroom or a group of students. As a senior applying to college, would a student have access to Walpole High School guidance and tools such as Naviance? Would letters of recommendation still come from people who know the student best? Excellent question. Yes, all around. Again, that goes back to one of the reasons why we chose Edgenuity. We wanted to keep our students connected with teachers who knew them best, who could speak to colleges about the great work, their resilience and commitment in this very difficult time. For a graduating senior, would the student's diploma be from Walpole High School or the organization for the remote-only option? Another great question. The diploma would come from Walpole Public Schools, Walpole High School. And our last question in terms of the remote learning management system, if a vaccine becomes available during the school year, will a student be able to resume classes at Walpole High School as soon as possible? Will a student taking honors be able to transition seamlessly and resume back at the high school? We do believe this model allows us, if there's ever a time where we can be fully in person safely and things go back to maybe a little bit more normal, we do think this model allows us for a more seamless transition. But I want to be clear and honest. Transitioning from a full remote learning management system into the hybrid model is going to come with some adjustments and some real thoughtfulness, and timing will be important. So if that opportunity presents itself, we'll work together to ensure the best transition. I don't know if seamless is perfect, but as seamlessly as possible. Now I'm going to shift gears and address some questions I've received just about the general hybrid. I might refer to Mr. Imbush, Mr. Connor, or Mr. Morganweck if there's a question I think is more specific, or I'll defer to when they have their individual building sessions. Will teachers be required to hold live classes? My hope is that they will be required to do so, given this was an issue during remote learning in the spring. So I think the only day this is relevant to is Wednesday, when all students are home remotely. And the answer is yes. Teachers will be required to have synchronous sessions. If we end up having to go full remote, as dictated by the state or as decision made for the safety of the town of Walpole, yes, teachers will have minimal synchronous requirements for instruction in their classrooms. And I ended this at the elementary as well. We got a question about MCAS from parent. Will MCAS run next year? I have no idea. And as soon as we know, you will know as well. I do want to say this has been an incredibly difficult time for all of us, but it does not change the fact that we are so excited to greet your children on the 14th. So thank you for being here. Please, if there are additional questions, we'll do our best to answer them, perhaps through an email or a phone call through a building principal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hun. Before I turn it over to Mike Frisha, I know that there were some very specific special education questions that came in. So I'll be turning those over to Dr. Quealy. And then also, please don't forget about the CPAC forum that's tomorrow evening. I did want to answer one because it's more of a general question about how evals would be conducted. And just to let you know that the special education department has been working on several changes. For example, electronic administration of some testing will allow for a 6-foot distance between the evaluator and the student to be allowed in the same room. There are also plexiglass screens for evaluations that cannot be done electronically. So those are just some examples, some safety measures that are being put in place. So Mr. Frisha, who will address some ventilation, he's become our PP and cleaning expert. And we'll address any transportation questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Goff. So I know Mr. Imbush answered some of the questions. I'm going to speak in a more general term to the 3 buildings. So as most of you know at this point, we have 3 pretty antiquated buildings that have univent systems in all of them that are older, in some cases 50 years old. So how are we ensuring your children are safe in these classrooms? And Mr. Imbush mentioned the increase of air movement and flow in the buildings is one of the CDC's and DESC's most significant recommendations. That's something that we're taking very seriously. So one of the things that we're doing to increase airflow is increasing the number of times we're changing our filters in our univent units. We're going from 1 time a year to 3 times. Again, just keeping that flow, that movement of air in the classrooms. These systems, and it's important to know, are designed to purify air and keep the CO2 levels down in each classroom for 30 students. We currently are talking about 15, in some cases 12 students. So the HVAC system alone is going to supply a lot of additional air that would have been needed for 30 students. In addition to that, we're opening windows, and we do have 2 fans, one to bring in air and one to exhaust air in every classroom, in every building in this district. So we're confident that will also increase the flow of air and remove any kind of particulates or things in the air, viruses that should be removed. We are in cases where it's internal classrooms and there are inoperable situations for windows, introducing HEPA, medical level HEPA systems in those classrooms. And if there are requests from teachers that it was not introduced, we will consider that and introduce them if we see the need for them. There was a question about Legionnaire's disease. That was from buildings that were unoccupied for long periods of time. Our custodians have been in the buildings and have been in the buildings since about a month after we closed, and continue obviously to be in those buildings. We have taken lengths to flush out those systems and make sure that we have introduced fresh water, fresh air, wherever possible to make sure that the buildings are healthy. I'm going to move on to PPE, personal protection. So we had a question, does the school have an adequate amount of face masks and cleaning supplies? I will answer that question with full confidence that yes, we do. We've been provided with very generous funding from the federal government, from the state government to supply the whole gamut of things related to COVID. And we've taken advantage of that starting on March 16th and still continues to today. We have adequate supplies of masks. We have 10,000 adult masks that we've purchased. We have 6,000 student masks that have been purchased. Those are primarily backups. We're going to encourage adults and children to bring in their own custom masks that they feel more comfortable with. But if they are to show up at a building and need a mask, they don't have one, we have plenty on stock. That goes for hand sanitizer, hand soap, disinfectants. That goes for sanitizing sprays and a whole litany of other related products. The flow of products was not very strong initially. It is, things have become available, and there's only a few items that I'm experiencing any challenges with at this point. I think the answer about will kids be 6 feet socially distanced throughout our buildings? Yes, absolutely. 3 foot was not going to work for us, so everything is designed for a 6 foot social distance. There's signage going to be in every building indicating pathways for directions for students to walk. The requirement for masks is reinforced. Staying 6 feet apart when you're at the main office is going to be labeled. Countless signs at every building, including the front entrance, where the requirements and expectations are very clear. Will teachers have shields in addition to masks? I know Kathy Garvin mentioned that. Yes, they will. They are available for anyone who chooses to have them. They are not a substitute for masks, but they are provided. We have an adequate supply of those. Cleaning. Does the school have an adequate number of custodians? I believe, yes, we do. We're going to change the shift around of one particular custodian in each building to make them available during the school day, in particular to help out with lunches and the serving of lunches in classrooms, facilitating that, making sure that sanitizing is available and disinfecting happens throughout the day. We will also have that cleaning done every evening as well as we've always done traditionally. How often will bathrooms be cleaned? Daily. There will be daily cleaning of bathrooms. There will also be cleaning throughout the day of high-touch surfaces such as handrails, bathroom surfaces. That will be going on throughout the day, and that's one of the reasons for having that additional custodian on staff. Will there be sanitizing in between classes? Good question. So I just want to distinguish the difference between disinfecting and sanitizing. Disinfecting is using a very powerful product that kills germs, viruses, and basically all things that we come in contact with. Sanitizing is preparing a surface for food consumption. Somebody's eating at a desk, use sanitizer. We do not use disinfectants during the school day unless it's on high-touch surfaces where there's enough time for them to dry. When we're in the classrooms, every classroom has been provided with wipes that use a sanitizing product. That's a way of cleaning a surface and preparing it for students to eat on that surface. When they're done, they can, again, sanitize. Those wipes are available to teachers and students, and the expectation will be that everyone will do their share to ensure that our surfaces in our classrooms are clean and that kids can eat in a healthy environment. And we've given the products to provide that. How often will classes and schools be disinfected? I wanted to just highlight that Monday and Tuesday will be learning days. Wednesday is a break, and it's an important break because it's between cohorts. There'll be extensive cleaning going on in every building on Wednesday, provided by custodians. That will supplement what was already done on Tuesday evening as a normal cleaning. Wednesday will be a thorough cleaning. Backpack sprayers will be used. These are electrostatic sprayers. They have a very complete coverage. Again, we want to limit disinfecting whenever possible because it is a very powerful product. But on Wednesdays, the backpack sprayers will be used in the classrooms. They take about 12 minutes in each classroom to go through, and they have a very comprehensive coverage of those classrooms. So that will take care of cohort B and preparing them to come back in after cohort A was in. So what about cohort A? When do we do that cleaning? Friday evenings or Saturdays, we have some flexibility there in our schedule. The same process will take place for cohort A. The building will be prepared after cohort B is left, and that the cohort A will come into a disinfected, clean building to start classes on Monday, as well as the staff. So we have protocols in place for making sure that these buildings are as clean as we can possibly make them. I'm going to move into transportation. I'll start with the message I've been asking of all families in Walpole. If possible, in any way, any form, I would encourage families to please, if you have a means to get your children to school, please do that, whether it be yourself or carpooling with another family. It is absolutely critical. We have gone from a capacity in our buses from 50 to 60 on the high side to 12. So obviously we have very limited ability to get our kids to school. We will do everything we can to coordinate, put siblings together on buses, get that capacity maybe to 18 or 20 at most, but going beyond that is not a possibility. So I'm looking for, and I want to acknowledge all the people at this point, families in Walpole who have opted to forego their children sitting on those buses and given up their seat for other students who need to ride, who don't have a choice. I'd please encourage the families at the middle schools and high schools to do the same if possible. We will refund money as quickly as we possibly can. Just I would ask that you send an email to Kim Poirier in our transportation office or the business office. You can send it to me directly. I'm forwarding them on as need be. But I will do everything I can to refund that. If we come back to, and I've gotten a lot of questions about what would it look like if we go back to full back in school, what would we do with the buses? I would say, in all honesty, we need to revisit buses in general at that point and see what the protocols are. But recognizing the people that have done the right thing, and when possible to give up their seats, I will do everything possible to get your kids back on the bus if that's the situation we're in. I can only hope that that's my biggest challenge at some point this year, getting kids back on buses. Talking about sanitizing on buses. Buses, just to be clear, the buses will be sanitized, high-touch surfaces after every route is run. So after every school route is run, the high-touch surfaces are cleaned by the driver. But given the timing of our bus routes, they can't go beyond that. So what Connolly has agreed to do, Connolly Buses agreed to do, is to disinfect after the morning run and then disinfect after the afternoon run. Again, these products take 15, 20 minutes to dry, so you've got to have that time. They will have that time after the morning and afternoon runs, so that the afternoon students have a clean bus and the morning students have a disinfected and clean bus available. No difference between the two groups. When will bus schedules be sent out? Great question. We are, again, as I expressed, really struggling with the ridership. We're hoping to maintain our similar routes, but just at a much lower level of ridership. It is an ongoing process. In all honesty, it will be at most probably a week, 2 weeks at best before the start of school that we will release those routes. We are working, please understand, we are working as hard as we can. There is one individual who does bus routing in this district. That's Kim Poirier. She does an amazing job, but she's one person. She's supported by others, but she is doing the primary task, and she is doing yeoman's work every day for everyone in this district, including our special ed vans. She does the routing for those as well. It is a massive undertaking that she is trying and doing a fantastic job at this point. So we will get those routes to you as soon as possible. And the last question was about refunds. Absolutely, as quickly as we can, we will get those refunds to you if you're willing to give up your spot. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And I know when you fill out that intent to enroll, there is a question about whether you're taking bus transportation or not. It's really important to answer that question because that will also help with the routes. And I know after the 20th, then we can start that Friday really working in and diving in and taking a look at bus routes and then also determining cohorts. I know there's a question about when will schedules and cohorts come out. We have to, obviously after the 20th, so we can see who's hybrid, who's in the remote learning management program. And then also we're working collaboratively with our unions because the our union has to also vote on the middle school and high school schedule. So we're confident that we've been working with them throughout the summer and having weekly meetings with the executive board. And I've been meeting with the union president and speaking with him almost on a daily basis. So our communications continue to be collaborative, and we're confident we'll be able to get this done moving forward. I know that before I hand it over to Ann Arpin, there was just a question about where to find the checklist, the health checklist. It is on the website. If you take a look, and there's a link to it under the health guidelines and the entry plan. You can go also on the DESE website and on our Walpole Public School website. We'll have the health guidance. Ann, I'd like to turn it over to you for some technology questions.
Thanks very much. So I have a few questions that came in through prior to the tonight's meeting. I'll take care of those. There, I believe, are probably some more in the chat that we'll have to try to answer directly or through another mechanism in the near future. First question is about the Chromebooks. A concern that they may not have the visual technology needed and that they also shut down, without the ability to stop the shutdown and may take a longer time to start up. The Chromebooks are, our tool of learning. As far as the visual technology goes, different models may have some different specs. Some video may be a little bit clearer on certain models than others, but I've really not run into problems with any that are inadequate. They may not be as smooth as some of the higher end models out there, but and the fact that they do shut down automatically, this is true. They will shut down. We have it set to shut down automatically after a 24-hour period to ensure that all of those Chrome updates are going down to the machines and for safety and security. The answer to that is that students should be in the habit of shutting down at the end of the day every night on their own, and then they won't be disturbed while they're working. And as far as the time that it takes to boot up, it should not take anyway near even 2 minutes for it to restart. So for our middle and high school students, they have been provided and reminded of a tech support form they can fill out. It sounds like a Chromebook taking more than 2 minutes to reboot needs some help, and we have some good tips that we can provide to help take care of some of those tech problems. So please have your child submit the forms. Another question is, will a Chromebook be provided if needed? And the answer is yes. All students, grades 1 through 12, will have a Chromebook at the start of school. Our current 7th graders through 12th graders have one in their hands that they will continue to use, and our 6th graders will be distributed a new Chromebook at a date to be determined at the start of school. Another question, technology can be utilized to the benefit to ensure a more enriched and remote learning. Has the school system tried over the past few months to get better at it? And what do you plan to do now? Certainly that shutdown didn't permit us to provide as much training as we would have liked out of the gate. But with what we've learned from this is that there are some great learning tools out there to promote engagement and learning for our students in a remote environment. We've purchased a number of products, and we have right now in the early stages of developing a specific professional development plan for all of our staff so that they can learn and deliver those new tools to the students. Next, and the last question I have here is, if incoming students have their own Chromebook, are they allowed to use them at school and during remote learning instead of the school issue Chromebook? And the short answer is that no, we don't enable student personal devices to access our Wi-Fi network at school or to bypass our filter in school or at home. Students are expected to use the school provided device in order to access Wi-Fi in school, receive tech support as needed, enable us to manage the devices to ensure security and safety of data, and receive all appropriate learning tools provided by and supported by the district. So while they're at home, they may be able to use their personal device, but while they're in school, they'll need to use the school issued Chromebook. That's it.
Thanks, Dan. Kathy, do you want to answer the one question that came up to just clarify that one medical question?
Sure. So the question that came up was, if I could clarify, if a student tests positive for COVID and the school does contact tracing to see who might have come in contact with the positive person, the question says, I think she said that the other students would need 2 tests, wait 4 or 5 days, and then in parentheses it said from contact, and then take a COVID test. And so ultimately, would they not have to quarantine for 14 days? So actually, I'm going to give an example. It's testing 4 or 5 days after you go into quarantine. So if a student comes to school on Monday and the nurse sends the child home because of a fever and other symptoms that they're concerned about, the child is tested later that day. The test results say they come back Wednesday, so 48 hours later. Then the contact tracing would begin, and the families would be notified later Wednesday or maybe even early Thursday, depending on how many contacts have to be made based on what the public health nurse can do in that amount of time. On the day that you go into quarantine, then the state would like you to wait, or DESE would like you to wait 4 to 5 days. That's because if you find out Wednesday, but you base it on Monday, the contact that the child had with the positive case, it doesn't necessarily give enough time for the virus to take hold. There has to be a certain, what they call viral load. And so they're asking for 4 to 5 days after you begin your quarantine. It's much more likely at that point that if your child is going to test positive, at that point they will test positive. They ultimately will, if they're negative. So if your child's quarantine on Wednesday and they test 4 to 5 days, that would be Sunday or Monday. So their test would come back, say Tuesday or Wednesday, and say it's negative. You can then come back the next day. That won't have been 14 days. I will note that this is different than DPH's regulations. DESE has a different set. DPH is allowing it for the school setting. So if you, as a parent, were exposed to somebody at work and you got a call that you had a quarantine, the guidelines from DPH for a quarantine to a positive case for adults who happen to be working outside of a school setting is that you would stay home for 14 days. And it doesn't matter if you have a negative test in that time. So that's the DPH guidelines. It's much stricter. DESE is going a little bit less than that because they're allowing for the viral load and going on the high probability that the child will not then develop COVID in those last remaining days. So that's why they're allowing students back a little quicker than they would be at, if they were, say, I don't know, working at EMC, although I don't even know if EMC is still out there. But
thanks, Kathy.
That clarified.
Just a couple more questions and clarifications that, I have 3 children, one at the elementary, one at the middle, one at the high school. Will they be going to school on the same days? Yes, we're cohorting families so that those children can go together. And I know that when you looked at the balance between cohort A and B, that there is an imbalance, and we did recognize that. So we will be taking a look, and we know that schedule in terms of, so the A cohort doesn't go to school more than, have more FaceTime versus the B cohort. So we will adjust that. In terms of the mask, I know there were some questions about, yes, the mask policy, and what does that mean about it being individualized. It doesn't mean that, students will get to pick and choose who wears the mask and who doesn't. Masks are mandated, and that will be a policy that will be voted on at the school committee meeting. What we're referring to as consequences. People were asking from, okay, so if a student doesn't wear their mask once, are they suspended X number of days? Those practices, and in terms of what will happen when students, or if students don't wear their mask, that will be handled at the individual level with the administration, and they'll be putting the practices in place or protocols in place for that. In terms of donations, people have been asking, can I make donations in terms of supplies? If there's something like smaller supplies like hand sanitizers and wipes, we ask you to contact your building principals, because they need to make sure to clear it with Mr. Frisha in order for the types of cleaning products that are being used. If it's anything larger than that magnitude, please reach out to Mike Frisha, and he'll be able to work with you on a one-to-one basis. And with that, I know that I said that, I mentioned it at the kindergarten and the elementary forums, and I want to mention it again at the middle and high school forums. We're very fortunate to have a school administrator who is also a former educator. Mike Frisha is able to really know what needs to be done for our staff and our students, both in a business sense, but as an educational sense. And that's really to our advantage. There's been many times that I have sat up in the middle of the night or the wee hours of the morning and have texted Mike about, okay, did we order this? Are we ordering this all the way from the months of May to now? And surprisingly, he must not be sleeping either, because he's texting me back saying, Bridget, I did that. That was 2 days ago. We've got it all set. So thank you, Mike, for that. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks.
So diligently for our students. Looking at what we are going to do from here on, Mr. Hahn, and anything to add before I go into the next? Okay, I know that there are a lot of questions in the chat, so what we are going to do is we're taking them, we're copying them, and we're going to get them off to whether it be Kathy Garvin, if they're a health question, individual building principals to prepare for your Q&A forums, if they were not answered, correct, if they were not answered, and also, Mike Frisha or myself to make sure questions get answered. So please don't hesitate at any time to reach out and to email us. You might just have to give us a little bit of time to answer the emails, but we're answering them as they come in. And please, if you can, attend the forum. Thank you so much for being able to come and view this presentation. It's greatly appreciated, because communication is key with us. And with that, have a good night. Good night, everybody.